Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Sharon and Joe show. My name is Sharon.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joe.
So, Joe, I can't remember. I think this is the third week since you've been on. Is that right? Has it been 3 weeks?
It might have been. Yeah, it's been a little bit of an uphill battle, not a struggle so much, but before we even begin, there's a handful of people out there that sent some comments and have kept me in your prayers, and I really, really appreciate that. It means a lot to me, and one of the best things about overcoming codependency, your own issues and narcissistic abuses, there's not too much out there that's scary anymore. I think when we got into these entanglements that, I had come face to face with my greatest fears, and thank God he came to my rescue. Um, Getting out of these relationships and thinking, okay, thank God now I can start fresh and a clean slate, and something huge happening in my life that really affected it. It was very disheartening thinking, okay, I just got through the worst battle of my life and I get to start over. And then there's another issue I have. And this deals all the way with my childhood. But I'm not dying. I haven't been given a death sentence. Even if we're all going to die someday, I guess. But it's, there's a question a very good close friend of mine used to tell me all the time. He says, Joe, sometimes you got to sit back and ask, is it a tragedy or is it an inconvenience? 99% of the time, it's an inconvenience of some sort. I have everything that I need today. And when I think about it, I have more than what I need. And the blessings are abundant. So thank you for the prayers. The vibes out there have kind of tilted the scale as far as my attitude is concerned. So I'm going to do my part, pray for potatoes all I want. But if I don't pick up the hoe and the shovel and dig and fertilize, nothing's going to grow. So it's a two-way street here.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I'm sorry, I rambled on a little bit, but
No, that's okay. It was about you. I asked people to pray, and so many of you were so kind. And we just really want to tell you that that's not something that we just take for granted. It's fantastic.
yeah, maybe one day, not that I'm that important because I'm not, but maybe I could share my story to help somebody else out there that might have been through similar things. I know for me, a huge part of this entanglement with the narcissist was my own self-love deficiency, my own low self-worth, my codependence, and how I felt about myself. Like I was.
That's the whole thing, I think.
Yeah, I was a bigger enemy than a narcissist.
Yeah.
The narcissist actually was a distraction. It took the eyes off of the real problem, and that was my thinking.
Yeah, me too. I guess it's probably all of us, right? I mean, because when you think about it, you're in a relationship entanglement with somebody abusing you. That begs the question: what's wrong with you? Why are you allowing this to happen to you?
Yeah.
It seems crazy. We feel like victims, but it's I don't know. We're perpetuating our own demise.
It's a mind F. You know what I mean?
It
it really is.
Yeah.
And that takes us, I guess, today's topic, which you want to talk about. Sharon was telling me on Friday, she's like, Joey, I got this video I made, and it was about, and I'll let you explain it, Sharon, but I have my own 2 cents to say in it too, and I just wanted to kind of chime in and piggyback off that, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. So Joe and I started this last week speaking about parental alienation. And that's a huge thing for many of us, and it goes both ways. It goes where the narcissist, actually, let me just backtrack just a second. So when I'm referring to parental alienation, what I'm referring to is when one parent unjustifiably condemns the other one to the child so that the child turns away from that parent or doesn't get to have a relationship with that parent. So I'm talking about this being done intentionally.
Now, where does it come from? How did you come up with that?
Well, the reason I came up with it is, so I'm sorry, I know I'm repeating something of what I said. Every week, my ex has no relationship with his children at all. Weekly, by order of the court, he's allowed to send an email to I call them my children now because he doesn't participate, but into my children, he's allowed to do this email. So I had gotten this email, actually, so they both send them to their junk because we're no contact. My daughter still reads it. So I asked her on Monday, I was like, oh, did you get an email? And she's like, oh, yeah. And so she read this email, and it disgusted me. It just disgusted me. This person has no relationship. Then he proceeds to write this email along the lines of, Hi, Paris. Hope you're doing great. So things are going really well for me right now. I'm involved with this group in New Hampshire, and I'm heading up this company, or whatever he was saying, and it was
It's
just,
part of
it
his
was disgusting.
his quote unquote vicarious recovery from alcoholism. Um,
I just want to finish this quickly. So I had posted that email online. I was just kind of like, oh, you guys, I know you can relate to this. And somebody didn't like it. He said that if that, not being able to be in contact with his child is like the worst thing that's happened to him. And then he kind of defended my ex. Well, what else was he going to say, basically, in that email?
and everybody's entitled to their opinion.
Yeah, well, and he unsubscribed, so it got me thinking about parental alienation, what it is, and things like that.
Unfortunately, I think he was comparing himself with a narcissist. Like, it's a poor guy. Like, if he was a victim of abuse, was probably the tables were turned, and his ex made him look out like the nut guy, and he couldn't see his own kids. That sucks, man. That's a shame. But to compare like a human being, a normal, decent, healthy human being, with a narcissist, it's like apples and oranges, man. You can't. It's those kind of, and God bless me. I mean, everybody was there at one point. But those kind of statements, like, well, you have to forgive,
Oh, God,
and it's just like, well, we never said not to. It's just the problem is that we forget, and then we become doormats, and then we're walked all over, and we allow the abuse to happen. It's like turn the other cheek, but that doesn't mean you got to stay there. Get the hell out. So it's like that kind of approach. The problem is that
So how you think initially about the
the thing
narcissist?
here. So
Yeah.
here's what I had to do. When you're dealing with extreme forms of narcissism to the point of sociopathy, like you and I were comorbid conditions with dissociative disorder, what I found helped me was when I had to dehumanize him. And I know that sounds kind of like, what? Like I told you before, one of the greatest accomplishments of my life was to get a divorce. I'm Christian. I know what divorce means. I held on to that belief of not, of till death do us part kind of deal. You'd have to like have gone through the spiritual battle to maybe understand, like, oh, I get it, man. Like he walked through his worst nightmares, and he was in the desert, and like there was no way out. He was beyond human aid, and God saved him. Well, what I mean by like dehumanizing my ex narcissist was, instead of asking who is she, I was like, what am I dealing with? Not who am I dealing with, but what.
I want to interrupt just briefly because I want to bring this. I understand like what you're saying, and it's an important topic. I just want to bring it back to parental alienation.
Yep.
Just in this term, are you saying that? All right. So, and you can keep going, but how your ex is, a what, and then that's the attitude you have when it comes to your child seeing this thing. It's a what, not it's his mom.
No, it's like, yeah. Here was my problem, is that whenever I thought like, who is she, or she's his parent, somehow like unconsciously I connected a comparison with a healthy, normal human being. Like Dr. Robert Hare, who wrote like the list of psychopathy in the DSM-5, calls those extreme narcissists up to the level of sociopathy like intraspecies predators. He doesn't even label them as human. So the problem is, when I label them as a human, I unconsciously think, oh, a parent. Oh, my ex. It's
they must love their child.
yeah, or a human being that like we're dealing with things that have no empathy. Like, so when I started thinking, what am I dealing with? The what part, I would go to the DSM-5 and I would go down that list of what they are, because they technically don't even have a personality. It's a combination of bits and pieces of things they picked up. So that then it would remind me, remember what you're dealing with. And we're just talking like emotionally, psychologically. Then, where my faith and my spirituality come in, it's like even bigger than that. So that I started to protect myself and keep on guard and stay to that no contact. So it's not like this was my ex. She cheated on me and she stole it from me, and okay, we're getting divorced. She wants half of this, and she's got a job, she's got her shit together, she cares about her kids. It's not like I hate her and I want to try to stop her from ever seeing the kids because she hurt me. Like, this bitch is fucking psycho.
Well, I was going to say, just somebody who would do that, somebody who's angry with you or angry with me or whatever it might be, and then alienate the children, that's messed up. But that's not what
Even
we're talking about.
no, we're not, and to a degree, at first, I hated her. I wanted her dead. You know what I mean? Like my first
Oh God, Joe.
emotional
I
response.
actually, to be real with you, I still struggle with that.
Yeah, to emotional response, my first response. But as I thought it through and I worked out myself and I found my own flaws, it wasn't a vindictive like when we went no contact. It's not the same thing as their silent treatment. I mean, they get off on like hurting and doing things like that. Our no contact is to protect us, our
But
souls.
what about somebody like you or I, right, where you have the children connection? How does that go into your view towards? Now, Joe and I both have two of our own biological children, and two of them, well, I guess one of Joe's is older. So when I talk about, a lot of times I talk about the teenagers here. So, because your older son you don't get to tell him whether or not he sees his mother. What about with your youngest? How does that affect you wanting him to see his mother? And what type of relationship does he have with her to begin with?
Well, it's not much of a relationship. He just wanted a mom, and it was a fine line because there was this person that was using drugs in the meantime, and she was down with some real hoodie ass people, like people you don't want to associate with. They don't care about themselves, let alone anybody else. So there was the part of me was just like, I don't give a shit if that's me, your mother, your brother. You're not going over there and putting yourself in danger like this. I'm your father. You're under 18. I have a right to protect them from that. And when I talked to the counselor, whoever this mediator was, I made it clear. I told him, listen, I wanted him to research a little bit about narcissism, a little bit. I told him to keep his expectations low because his mom would say, I'm going to do this, this, and this for you, and then he get his expectations up. I had to tell him, you're.
Did you ever consider telling him no, he can't see his mother?
When it came to where she lives at and the people she associates with, I would be considered like a irresponsible, abusive father if I let any of my kids or anybody I loved be around people like that, especially coming from an alcoholism and drug addict background myself.
Yeah.
Like these people they're not just, they don't go out to a bar and drink. You're talking shooting dope and like doing that kind of stuff. It was a fine line because I knew if I prevented him that he might go like, you tell a kid don't take the cookie from the cookie jar. Like,
see, it's different. Like sometimes not that I forget, but our situations are very different. My ex was never going to have, like, there was no chance he was going to have them. He just had removed himself completely. So for you were actually in a different position. Like for me, it was easier in a way, but for you that was something you really had to think about.
I gave him the basics. It took me years as an adult to come to an acceptance that there's things out there that exist that lack empathy, that have no personality, that are innately evil. If you want to define a person's character based on what they do, like what they do evil shit, man. Like, and it's
And then
not.
we're talking about letting our children be around them.
Yeah, well, my son was 17 at the time, so I was just like, what am I going to do when he's 18 or this or that? And you know, I gave him a little bit of cushion and leeway, but I said, as long as your mother's an active addiction, I was like, I will not allow you to. And if you got a problem with that, maybe talk to a couple of your friends and we'll see what their parents would do. Yeah. I think, see, the issue is like when I was going through this divorce, nobody understood that it wasn't divorcing a normal fucking human being, not even a normal drug addict or alcoholic. I mean, the source of her addiction stemmed from her personality disorder.
Yeah.
Which she never addressed. So when you're talking like to outside people, it's just like, oh, it's a divorce.
But it's not
like,
even just outside people; it's people in the court system who should know better.
There's another issue.
They're
like,
making important decisions.
The damn mediator said, well, it's better to have like an active parent that's a bad parent than no parent at all. See, I said, so you're telling me, let me get this straight. So it's okay for my ex to come pick up my son when she's nodding out the wheel from the line of heroin that she did an hour before then, or for my oldest to find a crack pipe in her car, take him downtown in the inner city and like be around a bunch of hoodlums. That's safer. It's like there's an ignorance in the court system. And then couple that would be in the mail.
Oh yeah, so you have it worse.
Many years ago, I had to go to anger management. I thought, like, I was gaslit. I thought I had issues. Like I thought, I mean, her own uncle said, Joe, I don't know how you have him. And he said, I would have beat her ass a long time ago. So, I mean, but I thought I was emotionally or mentally abusive. And I remember talking to one of the counselors there. She was very, I've met many an educated fool in my lifetime. But this lady, she had the experience too. She said, Joe, there's a lot of guys in here. She said, I've heard the stories. She said, a lot of them don't realize that they're codependent and they're the ones being abused. Yet they're responsible because they allow themselves to be in it. And these women, these psychopaths, are just taking advantage of them left and right.
Yeah.
So there was only a handful of two counselors maybe in the last 20 years, I've seen a lot, that had her number, that could tell. But for the most part, the court systems, the mediators, you would think, even law enforcement, you would think that this kind of like personality disorder is huge in domestic violence, and
yes,
to be educated
and it
in
happens on a it's not like this is a rare thing. It does happen to people. It happens enough that they should be aware of it. Like my own situation.
At least not let the wool be pulled over your eyes to kind of see
But
a
think
little
about
bit.
it. So the last day I was together with my ex, you guys, he tried to get me arrested, and he accused me of domestic violence. Right? It wasn't true. He had hurt himself, but he accused me of it. The police told me that they believed me, but it still went through a Child Protective Services investigation. Even when the woman came over from social services, it was all on my ex, but I still had to go through this. It just seems insane. Like when you were arrested, you're arrested, literally hauled away. Because, and we spoke about that. I could tell the cops that you hit me and you'd be arrested right away.
Yep, there's certain states.
There's like a fear for that.
Yep, there's a huge thing that the court systems are afraid of is that, you could call them domestic violence, the police leave, and then later on somebody is shot and killed.
Yeah.
And then it looks bad in the court. So certain states, if there's a domestic violence call, somebody's going to jail. And don't worry about it the next day or Monday or Tuesday, but forget that person has a job and a life. That he has responsibilities.
And it's not even just that. You can just randomly accuse somebody of a crime with no evidence.
Absolutely, man. And it's been done many times on me.
Oh, yeah.
And it's almost ruined my life. I was so codependent that I risked my own freedom. At the same time, I stayed because my two boys would have never had a chance. So there's multiple reasons why I stayed.
Once you have the kids, you're screwed. I mean, you just are to a large degree because everything takes on it's a whole new level.
Well, you're definitely beyond human aid, at least in my situation.
Oh, yeah.
But it wasn't like God had plans for me,
Yeah.
So, I think the best way to look at it, that I do, a healthy way, is to unfortunately have to dehumanize them and say, okay, what am I dealing with? So when you say who, then it's just your ex, and then it's like, well, she has a right to see the kid. No understanding of the background of what the hell she's about, what she's done.
Well, the thing is, when in my court, you've seen the paperwork. My ex has nothing to do with his own child, and it seems crazy to me, but it has nothing to do with him. But there were also other times when he was abusing us. I think that there were at least 2 times that we were in danger. Mm-hmm. I'm supposed to let my child so you're here talking about your ex, right? She's like this addict. You don't want your kids around that. I don't want my kids around somebody who has abused us, who tortured us, who we literally, and you were there, Joe, had to flee in the middle of the night and then he found out so quickly because he was stalking me. You know what I mean?
It's a tough gig. You have to appease the courts. You have to pick and choose your battle. When you're going through this, you really, in the back of your mind, the first thing you want to do is this MFer is going to make it as hard as possible. So anything that looks good, is too good to be true, is going to be, so that you lower your expectations down, so that you build up your endurance, because it's going to be a battle.
Everything is going to be a battle, you guys, when you're fighting a narcissist. Just everything.
And it's going to be okay, because as long as you let God fight that battle for you, he will win for you. It's just, it's a real mess, man. But I did what I had to do to appease the courts to a certain degree.
Yeah, because they just assume automatically
that everybody's normal, and
yes,
just, you guys,
exactly.
irreconcilable differences. No, you idiot. She's a fucking psychopath, and she almost destroyed my life, and she's going to destroy my kids' lives. But you can't, you got to pick and choose your battles wisely. Yeah. I told my sons, you want to turn 18, you guys, you want to see her, and that's your business. She's cut out of my life. I don't want her knowing nothing about me whatsoever. Whether I win the lottery or I get diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, God forbid, I don't want her around. Or I couldn't convince my sons that she didn't give a shit about them. Like, she was stealing from me while I had both the kids, her dog, 2 cats, her mother
So I
living
feel
with
like
me.
sometimes it's more difficult for you, and I think about this as we're speaking like right now. But for my kids, they never wanted anything to do with their father. Like, he had just freaked them out to the level that it was never, that it was it. From a long time, he hasn't seen them for 3 years. You are going back and forth with something because your kids still want to see her. So
They didn't understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, they just didn't. So, I had to humble myself to say, okay, Joe, well, dude, it took you 20 years to figure out what the hell she was. You want your 17-year-old kid to get an understanding of something that doesn't have empathy. That, how do I explain to him? A narcissist, this is how I see it sometimes. Like, to a narcissist, if feeling is like, if they feel they love you, that feeling means they love you.
Yeah.
It's not, love is, it has nothing to do with an action or an inaction or any kind of like anything that exerts energy. It's, if I feel like I miss my kids, I must love them. All right. If I feel like I love my kids, and like, feelings aren't facts, and love is far from just how I feel about somebody.
Yeah.
And to try to explain all that shit to the kids, and it's just like, listen, man, keep your expectations
Well, also,
low.
I think there's like a gender issue. I think that your male sons are going to have more of a sympathetic view towards their female mother.
They looked at Dad like this. Dad's strong. He can take care of us,
exactly.
and he's went through this all stuff.
Yeah,
and
poor mom. Like, I can
it's not
understand
even
that.
like, yeah, they're master manipulators, victims,
Yeah, exactly.
making them feel guilty over this shit. So it's like, learn a little bit about narcissism. And of course, I shared with my son my own experience with codependency. And I laid it out in terms where hopefully there was a seed that was planted.
Isn't that good, though, that we can do things like that? Because think about it. When we were, we're around the same age. When we were, the kids' age, had you ever heard of codependency? I had no idea what it was.
I heard of it, but it took me many moons to connect the dots. Like, this whole journey has been like a journey of self-awareness and self-love, to connect the dots, to forgive myself. But I heard it, but it never connected. Like, I heard people say on different channels of narcissism, like, I'm not a victim, yet they blame the narcissist for everything. It's just like, well, you're saying you're not a victim, but are you really connecting the dots to say, take responsibility for why you put up with that for 20 years, how you allowed it, the people that you hurt by allowing that to happen because your own selfish
Think
wants.
of how much can change, though. Once you understand that, once you get to a certain level, don't you feel like a whole new man? I mean, I feel a level of freedom that's incredible.
Yeah, to change, a simple shift in perspective. Like, what am I dealing with instead of who am I dealing with? Leads me to a list of characteristics that I'm dealing with.
But what do you think about what other people who hear this might say? You know what I mean?
Like, I've always been a big believer of forgiveness.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean, though, like, I stress, don't forget, like, that was the issue. I also stress, turning the other cheek doesn't mean you can stay there and wait for them to slap you.
Yeah.
I'm not about being a doormat for anybody. We crawl before no one. I made my amends. I did what I had to do, and I don't have to allow myself to be abused anymore.
Right.
So, for people that choose forgive no matter what, or
forgive, which means that they're actually not a bad person.
Yeah, like, to forgive them and stay with them instead of being honest enough to say I'm scared because I don't think I can make it on my own, and I don't think anybody else. I don't think I'm lovable. And if somebody really knew who I was, they'd never love me, and all this happy horse shit. Like, I think that's dangerous. It kept me stuck for a while, or this delusion I was in of till death do us part, and this divorce thing. It was a huge thing. Like, I made a commitment to God and to her. Although she broke those vows with her affairs, I forgave her, which I don't think I did. Like, I did, but you can't love somebody you don't trust. I had to admit myself, like, wait a minute, Joe, do you really love her? And that smashed me. I was like, wait, I don't? Like, what about me? Who the hell am I? If I say, I love somebody, I love somebody. And it was really it was a perspective shift for me to start looking at what these things are. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, and to go along whatever the court systems may say. Pick and choose your battles. Try to stay neutral, and no contact is. We talked about this before the video. Like, this is how sick and vile and wretched these things are. That 99.9% of psychiatrists and doctors and people in the healthcare industry say no contact is the solution. I mean, that's pretty fucking extreme. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
And then they say not only no contact with them, anybody that made it, they may know. Like, you need to cut off all your circles. If you stop and contemplate and meditate on that for 5 minutes, that should give you an idea of what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And that speaks volumes to say that this NPD thing is underrated as far as, I don't know if there could be a justified title to cause these things, F5 tornado, like whatever, but they're just dangerous.
I think we went a little bit away from our topic, so maybe we can come back around and
rope us back in.
Because I think you had a lot of important things to say. We can talk about that with the parental alienation.
Yeah,
and how that, because it's
if you want to see them as a parent,
yes, because it begins with your view. Like if I sit here and tell you, you know what, I believe that my ex is demonically possessed, like that he's not human. How can I, in the same token, pretend that somebody I feel that way about is okay to hang out with my child for the weekend?
Well, and then in your defense, for people that don't believe that they might not be possessed, then could you justify him being in a car in front of the house with you and the kids there, drunk, passed out, with the keys ignition, with a loaded gun in multiple, not just one, multiple magazines full of bullets? Like, so it could be like, well, Sharon, that's kind of extreme.
Yeah.
Or just, okay, explain that to me, dude.
Yeah.
Like, tell me how that's cool, and you could just overlook that.
Yeah, you're supposed to just ignore that. You're supposed to just think that, oh, well, it's the parent, that they must love the child. No, there's a reality to our life. All of us, once we've been through a narcissistic entanglement, we know reality. We know how life can be. And if you care about your child at all, you don't want your child following in those footsteps and living this miserable existence when you could stop it for them.
I told my son, I said, John, I was like, if somebody does you wrong, if they come back and can make amends, and I tried to explain to him, like, the word amend is a Latin root word for amendum. And if you think about, like, the Constitution, whenever you want to change the Constitution, they made an amendment. So amendment means to change your ways, that you'll be able to tell somebody, intuitively know if somebody has changed or not. Like, that's okay to forgive them and to allow that person, if you want to, and if you don't, that's okay too. But the change has to be there for a person to truly be sorry. And the degree of narcissism and sociopathy we dealt with, these people are maladaptive. They don't want to change. They don't have a willingness to change.
Yeah.
And that's just how they're wired.
I agree, 100%. Well, Joe, thank you for stopping by today, and maybe we'll have you next weekend, and we can talk a little more about parental alienation.
Yeah, and some other stuff too, if you want. If you guys got any ideas, let us know. And again, thank you, everybody, for the prayers and the comments. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you guys, you're the best, and he's right, we do. We're very grateful. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day, and I will see you on Wednesday. God bless.